Greater Memphis Media. TSD TV, Tri-State Defender.
You understand how important it is. You know, I watch a lot of stuff on Deion Sanders, and he's so motivating.
A complete and total failure of leadership from the federal government.
If anyone asks how it's going in the black community, you tell them we're rising.
Greater Memphis Media and TSD TV presents to you the Brian Clay Chronicles.
Welcome back to the Brian Clay Chronicles. Again, this is our Democratic primary series. In addition to Professor Steve Mulroy, we have a county commission candidate, Miss Erica Sugarman, County Commissioner Reginald Milton, and last we have County Commissioner NAACP President. I think he makes pizzas on the side, Mr. Van Turn. But anyway, let's get into it, Steve.
Sure.
How are you doing, man? You look great.
Well, thank you very much for saying so, Brian. You know, doing as well as we can expect given a campaign. You know, campaign is always rough, but we're in the home stretch.
Well, you got that campaign look, that campaign glow.
The glow.
That campaign glow.
Right.
You have been working extremely hard. You are a fascinating person.
Thank you.
In regards to your work, not only as an attorney, but as a professor, educator, activist. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, you're not originally from Memphis, are you?
Correct, but I got here as soon as I could.
Good man, good man. And you're a Grizzly fan, right?
Of course.
Go okay.
Go Grizz and go Tigers, both.
Go Tigers, go, right. So you went to Cornell.
Yep.
Out of high school, and you went to high school in Pensacola, right?
Yes, so I'm a Pensacola boy. I went to high school in Gulf Breeze, just outside Pensacola. And then for college, went up to Ithaca for Cornell University.
Go Big Red, right?
Yeah, that's right. Very good.
Go Big Red.
Yeah.
And then you went to law school where you met your beautiful bride.
I did. I met her at William and Mary.
William and Mary, the tribe, right?
The tribe.
Yeah.
Your mascots.
Yeah, and tell us about your legal background, which I find absolutely fascinating. For those that don't know, Professor Mulroy worked in the Clinton administration, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was a civil rights lawyer in the Bill Clinton Justice Department for about a decade, pretty much all of the 90s. And I did everything from voting rights work and racial gerrymandering cases to fair lending, fair housing, redlining, you name it, really all across the country. Now,
that was probably a fascinating time because you were transitioning, I guess, from Bush, Reagan, and those policies.
Right.
And then with Clinton, it was a whole new ballgame at that time.
Yeah, I think the civil rights folks felt they could breathe again, that they were allowed to be aggressive and proactive in enforcement in a way that they hadn't been. Now, you know, to be fair, George H.W. Bush, from what I hear from the veterans, wasn't as bad as Reagan. But certainly they felt there was more room for robust civil rights enforcement once Clinton came on the scene.
Of course.
Family. Security. Happiness. They had it all. A good life. Then, one day, the unexpected happened. And just like that, everything changed. Things spiraled downhill quickly. Suddenly, their lives were falling apart. They were facing the unknown. I'm attorney Ursula Woods. Call us at the bankruptcy law firm before it's too late. We can help you get back on track and give you the second chance that you deserve.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm attorney Monica Johnson, and let's talk about securing your legacy with a power of attorney and an advanced health directive. A power of attorney grants a named individual the authority to act on your behalf with respect to whatever matters are designated in the document. A durable power of attorney comes into effect or continues when you become incapacitated and unable to handle matters on your own. Let's switch gears and discuss how to ensure your desires are met when the time comes. An advanced health directive is a legal document in which a person specifies what actions can be taken with respect to their health when they can no longer speak for themselves. For example, would you like the doctors to take extreme life-saving measures to ensure your survival? What if your survival would result in you being in a vegetative state? What if amputation is required? These are all decisions that can be made in advance of a medical procedure or an unfortunate accident. Let's be proactive. Call me today, Attorney Monica Johnson, 901-325-0600, or visit me at attorneymonicajohnson.com.
Now, is it your opinion from a Washingtonian perspective that Reagan just didn't know, and then it took Clinton and his, liberal side to get things back together with the civil rights department and all of that?
Reagan knew.
Reagan
and all his people, they knew what they were doing. Mm-hmm. You know, when Reagan first started his first campaign, he opened it in Philadelphia, Mississippi, which was the site where the 3 civil rights workers were killed famously. And he made a speech with,
Was that the Willie? No, that was Bush.
Right. Willie Horton was George H.W. Bush in his '88 campaign. But suffice it to say, I think they knew exactly what they were doing.
One of the things that where we really met, we were on opposite sides of this particular issue. However, I was fascinated in all of the work in regards to what you've done as far as voting. Mm-hmm. You have been really on that. Talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, so my first job was in the voting section of the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Justice Department, and I did racial gerrymandering cases. I did discrimination regarding voter registration and method of election. So, you know, you can do an at-large election in such a way to dilute the minority vote. And there's a way to sue and get that remedy too under federal civil rights law. And that got me thinking more about election reform. Different types of election systems, maybe a little bit different from the winner-take-all model that we're used to, that have been used around the country and really around the world, that allow for more diversity of representation, both ethnic and minority diversity, but also diversity of parties. You know, so it's not the, you know, Coke versus Pepsi duopoly of the, you know. And I have been publishing and writing and litigating and being an activist in that general space ever since. My book from a couple of years ago, Rethinking U.S. Election Law, is about all of that.
Well, and I know we kind of went back and forth, you and I, on that particular issue. But I must say, looking back in retrospect, it was a fascinating way of approaching elections.
Yeah.
And once I saw your perspective on it, I was like, I can understand why those types of elections where you have the count and all of that are becoming popular in certain areas.
They've become more and more popular in the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, I think the number of jurisdictions has jumped from the beginning of this century from like maybe 11 to 15 that used ranked choice voting to now over 200, including most recently New York City, where they had their first ever use of it in their city elections, and it resulted in the most racially and ethically diverse city council in the city's history, the election of only the second black mayor, and the first time in the city's history that it was a majority female city council.
Right, because in addition to Eric, what's his?
Garner.
No, the new mayor of New
I know
York.
who you mean, Adams.
Yeah, Eric Adams.
Abrams?
No, Adams. You're right.
Adams.
There was another young lady that was even being considered at one point in time for
Yes.
the young lady
Ketanji.
on MSNBC. I can't remember her name.
I know who you
right
mean, but for the Ketanji Brown Jackson seat, the seat
Right.
that ultimately became
Yeah,
Ketanji Brown
that's her
Jackson's.
seat, yes.
Yeah, and I will just mention, don't need to go into all the details or the pros and cons of all of that stuff, but I just will say Memphians voted on that issue 3 times by referendum, and they voted for those reforms each time. And then unfortunately this year, the state legislature in Nashville shut it down, which is yet another example, I think, of Nashville micromanaging and taking away local control from Memphis.
And it's interesting you go to that part because I would love to talk about Steve Mulroy, the elected official.
Whether you're planning for a comfortable retirement, preparing for her big day, or saving for graduation day.
I know it's a lot, but what do you think?
We can help with that.
Preserver Partners, preparing for your future today.
The day our son was diagnosed with cancer, we didn't know what to do.
You know, you have the really nice people and you have a really nice place, but then you have that one big struggle that you're going through. So.
The question we're always wondering about is, what if it comes back, or what if she has complications from her therapy as she gets older? Should we really be considering this clinical trial? Is it really going to help him?
When the doctor was telling me I had cancer, I didn't know how to act in front of my mom. I didn't know how to handle this news.
When it comes to pediatric cancer, there are always more questions than answers.
When we talk about the state of Tennessee and its micromanagement of Memphis, is that one of the reasons why that you were led to run for the county commission?
I think that's a big part of it. Another part of it is that unfortunately we've had a district attorney who for the last 12 years has really pushed, I think, stuck in the 1950s mass incarceration,
right?
Lock them up, throw away the key approach that I don't think is working.
No.
And I think ultimately results in disproportionate burdens on African Americans in Shelby County.
Is she tone deaf? and I don't mean that to be let me say this for the people out here in Memphis. This is a nonpartisan program, but it does seem like she does not understand, and we're talking about Amy Wyrick, the disproportionate numbers of African Americans and now even Latinos that are being incarcerated. And I know that's an issue that you're very hot on.
It's a big issue, and I'm not going to psychoanalyze her or presume to look into her heart, but I will say this. Is she tone deaf? Well, she's got attorneys who are 90% white in a county that is 55% black and where 85% or more of the criminal defendants are African American. That seems tone deaf to me. Just last month, or the month before, in the same month that she took an African American woman like Pam Moses and gave her 6 years in prison.
Which I did not understand.
For attempting to register to vote when the probation office told her she could vote. In the same month she did that, she agreed to a plea deal where a white deputy sheriff who repeatedly raped a 14-year-old girl got a deal where it was probation and no jail time. So is she tone deaf? She's clearly tone deaf.
I have been very, very concerned about Wyrick. I know that she has been, I think Washington at some point in time was looking into her administration. How would a Mulroy administration differ from Amy Wyrick's, the way she rules right now?
I think it would differ dramatically. I mean, I think it would be a 180-degree shift from an old-fashioned mass incarceration approach to a progressive reform prosecutor approach that's been tried in other cities in the last 10 to 15 years. So for one thing, big push for racial diversity among the attorneys in the office. I think we'd also...
Which we don't have right now.
No, it's 90% white. And then I think also a big push for fixing our bail system.
Okay.
Right now we have 2,000 people languishing behind bars in 201 Poplar. Most of them there haven't been convicted of a crime, are there for the simple reason they can't afford cash bail. The longer they're there, the more likely they are to be black. A large significant fraction of them are ultimately going to be released, but by then we'll have disrupted their lives, their careers, their education. I think we should move to a system that's been tried in other cities successfully where the presumption is, putting aside very serious violent crimes, the presumption is release them until they've been convicted, unless you've got specific evidence that that particular defendant is a risk of flight or a danger to the community.
Right.
Where that's been tried, crime hasn't risen, people show up for their court dates, the republic has not fallen, and I think it's a more humane system, and I think ultimately it's more effective in reducing crime.
It's very interesting that you bring up that particular issue. One of the segments that we have on our program is From the Bench with one of our guests' brother, Tarek Sugarman.
Oh, of course.
And Tarek Sugarman mentioned, and I know that my producer is saying that we got to go, but he mentioned that Nashville has adopted a lot of the policies that you just brought up, and crime has gone down immensely.
Correct. And they've also got a conviction review unit where they look back and see if there were past injustices.
Talk about that very quickly.
Specialized team of people who are part of the DA's office but independent from everybody else. Look at past cases where there are wrongful convictions. If so, bring them to light and remedy them. Seems like every couple of months there's a headline out of Nashville about someone being exonerated. It's been tried in other cities too, it works. It was the first thing I talked about in the campaign. Amy Wyrick is steadfastly opposed.
Would you work with the Southern Poverty Law Center on issues as well?
I would work with them. I've worked with them in the past when I was in the Civil Rights Division. There are also a number of criminal justice reform national groups that specialize in advising progressive DAs once they get elected. And if I were fortunate enough to be elected, I would be working with them too.
If you're elected, you'll come back to the Brian Clay Chronicles.
It'll be the first thing on my agenda,
The first
Brian.
thing you'll do?
Yes.
This is Professor Steve Mulroy, one of the most fascinating people. And let me also say, one of the things outside of all the politics and things of that nature that during this season, you did a magnanimous act. Many don't know that Steve Mulroy donated his kidney in an altruistic way, which set off a chain of 28 people donating kidneys and different organs?
That's right. So I donated to a stranger. I still don't know who it is. But because I was donating to anybody and I wasn't asking for anything in return, I didn't have a brother-in-law that needed a kidney, I was able to set off what they call a donor chain around the country. And so 28 people around the country in a 6-week period were able to get the kidneys that they needed because I was giving it without asking for anything in return to whoever would need it. And what that teaches us, Brian, is that a lot of us here, we have a completely superfluous kidney. If we were to do altruistic kidney donations to a stranger, we would not only save one life, we could save dozens of lives around the country.
Incredible. And many of you all know that I do suffer from end-stage renal failure, but we're a tough group. We come from good stock, Steve. We come from good stock. But I just want to thank you on behalf of whoever that person is. You're a beautiful human being, man.
Thank you.
Love you, brother.
Likewise.
We'll be right back with Mr. Reginald Milton, County Commissioner, who is running for juvenile court clerk. Pow, pow.